honor, pleasure to introduce Katie Leven today. She is an ENL teacher from the Western region of New York. She's a certified Spanish and ESL teacher with 15 years experience in urban, suburban, and rural settings across grades K through 12. And she's currently teaching ENL in grades 3, 5, 7, 8, and high school. So I think that's enough, maybe. I just want to say welcome, obviously, to New York State TESOL. It's great organizations you've seen. There's lots and lots of presentations nearly every day at the moment. So Katie today is structuring standalone time. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. And I think Katie's going to probably answer them maybe at the end. Otherwise, over to you, Katie.
Okay. And I was just checking. I had one other person to admit. I hope they got in. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me today. And thank you again for being here. I do really mean it from the bottom of my heart. It's nice to see such interest. You know, I realize it's a busy end to our day. Some of you may still be in the building. Some of you may be walking out. Some of you might have made it home like me by just being determined. So we're happy you're here. And we do really appreciate that. So thank you. I'll just, sorry, when I get nervous, then sometimes I click on the wrong button. But I did want to just start with my background. Like Leslie said, I do have that 15 years of teaching experience. But today isn't really about me. Today is just about some of my ideas that I'd like to share with you all and get your information, your ideas of how you, what you're doing in the classroom, because there's so much that we do in our standalone ENL time. So I did want to start just with a super quick background. Like Leslie said, I am a certified Spanish teacher as well as an ESL teacher. And I've used my Spanish working as a waitress, working on an air base, working as a teacher. I still use my Spanish all the time. I have also taught French along the way, and I've traveled a lot of different places as well. So I just want you to know that I come to you with a unique and varied background. I have taught students in urban settings. I've had 20 kids in my class, all English language learners, and you know, it's a unique experience. I did want to start just really with my core beliefs. I do value what I do. I do feel it's so very, very important. What we're doing with our English language learners and in welcoming them to our country and helping them, or you know, welcoming people who are already here, and just educating them in the English language so that way they can develop and really get more power in the world. And we want the students to feel that value, that sense of belonging. Here are some of my values that align with a book I was reading, and I was like, well, it's perfect because I always have high expectations for my students. I want them to be engaged. I want them to be successful. But my job really is to support them, to reflect on what I'm doing. And so I've developed this routine that really helps me to teach my learners. So the question is, what do you teach during your pullout ENL, ESL, or standalone time? You know, I'm old school, so I do still a lot of, they say the class is ENL, you know, we could go into the semantics, but the question in the chat is, what do you teach during your pullout or standalone time? What types of activities do you do? And I'm betting, Leslie, we're seeing the chat blow up because we do a lot. Ooh. Yes, Kelly, depends on the group. Integrating language, social studies, science. Yes, integration is absolutely key. Yes, Emily, I completely agree. Everything. We do teach everything. And that's why I kind of gave a moment to think. We really do a lot. And we are amazing teachers because we have to be so flexible to be able to go into so many different settings. So yes. And when I first started teaching, um, my first routine with my 20 kids, inner city, I was told do 3 days of instruction and then do 3 days where they can work on their homework and you help them with it. And that was my first routine, my first introduction, as an ESOL teacher. The person that was going out told me to do that. So I've really grown and developed from where I started, but it was, we have to live through these experiences to grow, and develop and be the best teacher we can be. So routines are really the quickest way to get rid of stress, to make your life easier, to streamline your classroom, your teaching, and all our preparations. So by using the same consistent routine, the students don't have to wonder what they need to do, and they can focus on that language aspect. And then it was not Emily, it was my other participant, I'm sorry. That cross curricular connections, bringing in, so this right here on the screen, or the cross curricular connections are essential. So this right here on the screen, is the board that's up in my room. We have our essential questions. So how do you get more power in the world? In the middle, I can put my standards that we're going to be hitting for the day, what we're focusing on. And really the big thing there is the schedule. Every day we have a discussion, where I, welcome the kids in. How's your day going? Is there anything you need right now? Is there anything we need to work on today? And that doesn't mean I'm going to spend the whole day on whatever they need, but I need to find out what they need. We jump right into word work. Then we read together or discuss what they read the night before. We will build off that with some writing, and then if there's any questions and closure, we need at the end. And that is my very short. If you came to see what's my routine, that's right there in a nutshell. But really, I think the most important thing with having routines is how we can be flexible within these routines. So I'm gonna dive into the different sections. And if you have, are there any questions right now just on the main routine before I talk about how you can differentiate based on what your learners in your classrooms need?
Yeah, actually just Kelly asked a question, how long is your class in minutes?
40 minutes. So yes, it's a lot built into a short amount of time.
That's the only question we've got now.
Perfect. So when we do the opening discussion, and I'm just going to go right in order, this was a presentation I did earlier over the summer with the Western New York region of the Arborn, and from Tan Hun, he talked about the social emotional learning and bringing that in, and really you build that in, I think, during the welcome, or where you kind of see how their day's going, and you do something fun to connect with them, or something to play with the kids, and have that little bit of personality show through. And it's a time to build that trust, be a human, and have the kids realize that they can come to you if they have a question or if they need something. So I thought this was a great graphic, and I got it from his Empowering L's website. So in your guys's classrooms, in the chat, I was hoping we would find out, what word work routines do you use during your pullout, ENL, or standalone time? And if there is there anything you do during push-in time? Just a couple with it. So I'll give you a minute to respond in the chat with word work routines. All right, so I see homographs, I see phonic patterns, orthographic mapping, phonemic awareness. Yes. Heidi, I will come back to your essential question in just a second. Yes, Heidi, yes, bridges, the ERLA power words with flashcards. Good dictations. Yes, changing one letter to switch the words. You start with a CVC word and then you can add on the E, CVCE, and then yes, to practice the different spelling things. Awesome, Tori. So she uses a slideshow that includes decoding, minimal pairs, phonics, and word work. So you guys, yes, Scott, Words Their Way is one of the things I'm going to talk about. The Raz Kids I would use later on, not because word work is, in my mind, you and I might define it a little differently, and that's okay. Because I literally stick to the word level. Emily, I like the words of the week. So the first question was about the essential question at the top. And I'll be honest, that essential question I got from Bridges. And the essential question doesn't change at all throughout the year. The whole year, our focus is on getting power in the world, because by learning English, we are getting more power in this world. We are getting the ability to, if the students are able to write in their home language, to do that communication in the two languages, the bilingual, the trilingual, and so on, is just so incredibly powerful. So for me, I use a lot of different word work options, and it depends on the kids in my classroom at the time, what they need. So I do use Words Their Way. I do use the inventory, and then see where their levels are. So then they can be doing different sorts, even in the same classroom. On writing A to Z, which is part of reading A to Z, there's what's called Write Writes, that have simplified activities for getting students to start noticing, making corrections in their writing. There are some daily language reviews, which is more focused on editing. General phonics, I know one of the people talked about, and I have the example over here in the blue words on the side. Ray goes to gray. So they would build Ray using letter tiles, and then they build it up to gray, and then swap out to pray, spray, and then adding those derivational endings, the spraying, the sprayed. And again, you could do that by the green ideas, like you can have them build those words, then later you can have them type the words, that you can have them find them in sentences, the different skills that they need as they're going up. But yes, I agree with the ERLA, which is which it's Bridges program, using those foundational reading skills. So are there any questions about the different word work options themselves, how a program works? We'll just look in the chat. And I can sorry, I forgot to share the link at the beginning, so I know that was a request, and I'll throw that in there. ERLA power words compared to academic vocabulary, they are two different things. So ERLA power words are for reading instruction. So they're like the tricky words or the snap words. And so the question is, what % of my time is given to word work? I try to stick to 5 minutes, 5-10 at the most, if we're really learning some new vocabulary. And I do include, so on top of the Words Their Way, then I do add in pictures along with the words to sort. So that way the students are able to connect the meanings of the words with the word work themselves. So I wanted you guys to kind of think about what sounds beneficial out of this word work. What doesn't sound helpful? Is there any way you thought right now you saw some routines, you saw how I have the opening discussion and the word work? Do you think you could add that in, add a couple more, to your routine? I'm just curious what you're thinking. And we also need time to pause and process what we heard. Our school district does not have a specific scope and sequence for the grade level that we have to assess students on. I fill in the gaps at my discretion, which I know I'm very, very lucky to be able to do just what the student needs, because really you don't need to be teaching what they don't need. How much time for each of those? So I'm sorry, Sally, I did not make that clear. I pick one of those activities based on my learner's needs. So in my one 5th grade class, my one student needs the daily language review. He really needs to work on editing. So I do that with him. With my other student in 5th grade who's on opposite days in the hybrid schedule, I do the writes because she needs it at a simpler level. With my 7th grader who is an emerging student, I do words their way because they need the vocabulary to be and the spelling to develop a little bit more. With the ERLA, I'm gonna be honest, I've used it when I've had multiple learners learning sight words in the same classroom with the power words. So Corey, honestly, the question is, do you get baselines or diagnostics to determine gaps? I am lucky because I work with the kids across various years, so I know where their needs are, and I can flex my scope and sequence, so to speak, to what the students specifically need help developing. So that was thank you for helping me make that clear. It's just based on observation. It is not based on any anything specific. Sorry, there's a couple people joining in it. All right. Tammy, I'm glad you made it back in. So good. I'm glad we have questions. I'm glad I can answer them. Is there any other questions I missed? Yes, and you could do it as centers, but again, I pick what the kid really needs help on. So and choose to work on that. So after we do word work, we go into reading, and all of us as ENL teachers and in the classroom know that there are different types of reading, whether we're doing the guided reading, which is targeted at their instructional level, literature circles, which are more for discussion and group based. I do not do those in my standalone classroom, but I do those in an integrated classroom. There's reading for pleasure, which I'm hoping they're doing at home. Close reading, which we will talk about. I do also incorporate close reading a lot with the content. And then fluency practice, depending on their needs. You can even build the fluency practice into just practicing a paragraph out of the content you're already doing. So these are different types of reading, and I'll show you how I use different types at different times. And I just kind of talked about that. But in my actual routine, what I do, we have so my students are um, hybrid students or daily Lancers. That's our little logo for the school is the Lancer. So they're either daily kids, which are 4 days a week and 1 day virtual, or hybrid, which is 2 days a week in the building, 2 days asynchronous and 1 day synchronous. So on Mondays, everyone's on the computer, everyone's remote. So um, I do small group sessions based on their grade level. And I use this routine even on my virtual time. So we start with the hi, how are you? And we get into the word work. I have made Jamboards with the Words Their Way sorts where we develop those and have the pictures on the next one. I have 2 slides open at the same time for if I have 2 kids in the group, 3 slides for 3 kids, and I can go back and forth between them on Jamboard. If you make the slides at the top, if you pop them down so you can see across, it actually can show you their writing on their own slide. So I really like that. And I use that with the kids. You can just literally click the 3 dots on the side, the top right corner at the top, and pop it open. And actually, I should show you that so you know what I'm talking about. So let me pop one of those WordWorks up. And I apologize because I work for BOCES and I am spread between 2 different school districts. So I have 3 different Google accounts that I always have to switch in between. So here's our Words Their Way, and I do have a template that I keep for the original. This, you can see it on your screen, I believe. There it is. So this was our sort from yesterday. The headings are in the yellow, the AW, the AU. I have it in my title that it's the Words Their Way. It's a within word sort and it's level 33 or sort number 33. So one student I had 2 girls in this group. One student was late. So right here you can see how this first student sorted the words. We figured out that the AW comes at the end of the word. We have lawn over as an oddball because there's an N after the AW. So that's not following the rule that the AW, the ah sound comes at the end. Whereas the AU comes in the middle of, and I do emphasize that it's not in the middle of words, it's in the middle of the syllable, because like strawberry, and I have them think about straw versus strawberry, where straw is at the end of the syllable. So this is the program Words Their Way. And if you search online, most of these you can find their books and everything, their sorts. I don't know why the copyright is allowing them to be online, but you can find most of them right online. So when we sorted, and we noticed that our Western New York pronunciation of laugh is different than sauce and cause and fault. And so we did talk about that, and we talked about whether we would move it to be an oddball or not. So from there, we went into developing the vocabulary, and actually had the student label them. And notice I have 3 saws on the page because I wanted them to realize that, you know, there are different types of saw: the chainsaw, the handsaw, and the motorized saw. And that's only half the words in the sort. So the next day they will end up going in and sorting here. I'll have one student on slide 4. I'll have the next student on slide, I'll duplicate it. So here I'll show you right now. So you expand by clicking that down button. You click duplicate and it makes a second one. So if I have 3 kiddos, I click duplicate. And so then I can have Sally on 4, I can have Bobby on 5, and I can have Jim on 6 or whatever. Obviously, those are made up names. and I can see their work. I can see as they're sorting and it's moving around as I have it pop down like this. And then if I see one of them get stuck, I can help from there. So that was a digression of how to use Jamboard with WordWork for your virtual learners. So I hope that was helpful. If you haven't used Jamboard, they consider it like an interactive whiteboard for using with Google Meet, because our one district is completely on Google, actually two of them. And then the third one that I work in, it uses a combination. So I'm sorry, that was all about, that was still word work, but getting back to reading routines, Mondays I have the kids virtual. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays I have the next group of kids. And so I would do a guided reading, which is at their instructional level, and we would alternate between fiction and nonfiction texts. I do like to give the kids options, so I have like a stack of books. Which do you want to read? And then, flip flop to the opposite level where we can talk about sight words. We do all the important reading, the pre-reading, the during reading, the after reading. And sometimes a book can be stretched out over a couple days if we need to. If we can get it into, I'll send it home with them to read through as well between day 1 and day 2, to have that extra time. I have kids, I'm like, go and take this and read this to your little brother or sister, because it's good vocab development and they can chit chat as well. And so, I especially this year, I have to send stuff home because there's just not enough hours in the day to get everything done. But we do talk about vocabulary, and I pick again based on what the student needs. When we read together, I'm noticing where they are, even if it's a pronunciation error. I just check in. Hey, do you know what, you just said this word, it sounded a little funny. I don't say it sounded a little funny. Just like, what do you think this word means? That they said a little funny. Because I find a lot of times they're saying it funny because they've never seen it. They don't know what it is. And we try and figure it out based on the context if we can, to prepare them for that NICE slot that they will be taking this year. So after our guided reading at their instructional level, then I go and alternate to a close reading, or even it can be spread across multiple weeks if we need to. And the close reading many times is content related. A close read is supposed to be at a higher level for the students. It's supposed to be more of a complex text. And so when we do a close read, I don't know if you've touched on this book, read this book, L Excellence Every Day. But I find it's very helpful, has some great routines in it. And I wanted to just touch base on their close reading routine, because this is along the lines of what I was talking about with any type of reading, really, is we have that activity beforehand to build when we're doing the close read. Or I just, with the guided reading that's at their level, I just set the stage. Okay, today we're going to read to find out what happens to Billy. All right. Or today we're going to, we were reading to try and figure out the word wonder. We were reading the short version, or the child's version of R.J. Palacios' We Are All Wonders. It's written from the point of view of Augie, to connect in with our story, because they're reading the novel Wonder. And then we want to read it once to understand what we're reading, and then we can go back to analyze, infer, and then write. And this is the strategy that we follow. I'm gonna just jump ahead. So what in your guys' minds, we're gonna again pause and process what sounds beneficial, what doesn't sound helpful. Have you thought of a way to streamline maybe thinking about alternating, if you can, days, the type of text. So I want you to take a minute to pause and process, think what other people, where do I get books for guided reading? Most of mine, I do a lot of reading A to Z. The one district I am is subscribed to the ERLA program. They have a whole bunch of book bins at all the different levels. So um, um, I get the books out of the bins and they can pick from there, fiction, nonfiction, etc. I'll sometimes pull ones out that I don't want them. If it's a fiction day, I'll pull out the nonfiction because they really need to be balanced. Yes, Heidi, using the close read time to pull in their content areas, I think is essential. And honestly, even math, you really need to look at word problems in the vocabulary, and it's close reading when you're decoding a story problem, when you're trying to interpret what is going on in a story problem. And I think it's very important. That is absolutely how I try to pull in the content areas. Um, and I've even had, if I needed to, for example, we have students that go home. A lot of our students are migrant workers. So they go home to Mexico for winter, for Christmas, and sometimes longer. So last year, when one of my kiddos came back in 6th grade, his class was on chapter 16 of one of the Harry Potter books. Obviously, there's no way to get him caught up on 16 chapters of Harry Potter. And he still needed to read the last 5 and do the activities for the last 5. So in that sense, our content area reading was reading summaries in English of the books, so that way he was prepared to participate in what was going on in the chapter. First, I started with just a summary of the whole book up to where they were in it, and then it got a little bit more into detail because he needed to know who the characters were. Kelly, the question asked by Kelly is, are the screenshots from the book by Tanya Ward Singer? Yes, they are. And I do like that book. Yes, Jennifer, it is hard right now with only seeing the kids 2 days a week. So when we can, I do try to use virtual time, send stuff home, because I am lucky to connect with kids depending on what they need. And I only choose what they need. So the person who asked me earlier about the scope and sequence, I'm sorry, my kids need the specific skills, so that we can build on. So I'm not teaching them the stuff they already know. I'm only teaching them what the new stuff that they need. So then that pretty much right there in and of itself, if you just add in a writing component, is my routine. Then the kids will write, and I'm going to show you in this last little bit, when we do annotations, the parts that I add in. So my question, what annotations do you use in your classes? You're doing the close reading strategies. If you want a very simple routine, it's just mark the questions, mark what's surprising or important. I personally use stars or question marks. That's me. This was just a picture I grabbed just to show you guys as a way to think. If you want to get a little more complicated with your annotations, if you have kids that are a little bit above, Catch is a great thing, especially at the high school, for a close reading annotation. Where you circle unknown words. You would acknowledge any confusion by putting question marks. You get to talk with the text. capture the main ideas and then highlight the important ideas. This is a new one I was recently introduced to, so my learners are not at the level, but if you are getting more into a classroom, you might see something like this with the catch. I am going to just throw out, my kids are coming home. I can hear them outside. So don't be surprised if there's a little extra noise, and I do apologize. We could kept them away as long as possible. But we love them. So that's one annotation one. This one again is from that Tanya Singer. I forgot a name of hers and I apologize. But if you just highlight the main ideas, circle unknown words, and then they write comments in the margin, or those just statements is the big thing in the margin, to and underlining text evidence. So these are just some annotation strategies. And then when we get into the writing, the two big things when I have my students respond to literature are the words RAD as an acronym and RACE or RACER as an acronym. So RAD stands for restate, answer, detail, detail. And I use that with my most simple answers. So the short answers on the state assessments, or the younger kids, the third graders and fourth graders. I would use the RAD with. The RACER is for the extended response and the older kids, middle school and high school. I would use that where they restate the answer in the question. Both obviously start the same way. Answer in your own words. With both of those, a strategy I learned are the words many places, many people, or many things are keywords. I'll say that again. Oh, you're okay, Gracie. All right, many people, many places, many things. You can use to answer yours, and then you would go into citing your text evidence, explain your answers, and then the restate, and then make sure you reread if you include that second R. So to have that introduction and conclusion to your extended responses. So these were just templates for when I do the writing. These are strategies for responding to writing to make sure they have what they need to have. So I'm gonna have us pause and think and type what at this point I want you to kind of process. Oh, you know what? I skipped one other thing that is important. So is on tracking and tracking student data. But I want you to kind of pause and process, because I've gone through a lot of information today on the routine and the different parts. And I'm just going to show you the last thing, and then I'm going to want you to think about what you might be able to do right away. So how do you keep track of what you've taught? How do you keep your progress monitoring? How do you organize your data? I just have some charts that I use, and here's I got these from another ESL teacher that I work with in Lewiston Porter. So you can see there's a reading one, a writing one, and then a content area one where we have just the date, the topic that they're learning about. We want to make sure we always give compliments to the progress they're making, and then what did we teach specifically. And these are, you can see there's 9 spots, so I can do this over 9 days. Do I do it every day? No. And it depends which classes I'm pushing in with them. But I find this chart works very well as anecdotal notes for when I need to do my progress reports at the end of the semesters. I can look back. Those are the skills I've been teaching. These are my notes. Yes, I do have a plan book on top of this. Sometimes I do think I'm doing too much by having both, but I do have it. And then finally, these are student data tracking charts, and I shared the PowerPoint with you guys, and in the link at the bottom in the speaker notes, it tells you specifically what website you can find this. It's for free on the curriculumcorner.com. But I use this chart to help keep track of my students' stuff. Where it says August, I put last year's data. So if my student, like I had a student who left in March at a level G reading level. So then when he came back in September, I assessed him. He actually jumped to a J while we were on virtual instruction, which was amazing. And so that went in the September box for that column. And then I went down up until when he left for Mexico in November. And I think he got up to an L, if I'm not mistaken, before he left. And so when he comes back, I'll start tracking again with his data. Our district uses the Ames Web Plus assessment. So I have their numbers in a separate column for that, for ELA, for math. And if I want to get into the fluency, I can chart fluency. I just love these charts. It's just a quick peek to see everything all at once. So this was a very full 51 minutes. Now is to kind of pause and process and think, what is one thing that you might want to start implementing tomorrow? And I only want one thing, because if you have one goal, you will be more likely to achieve it. If you have multiple goals, you're less likely to achieve it. So our whole idea here is start small but think big, and you can accomplish a lot. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I'll pull up the chat if there's anything else I missed. Yes, Emily, I do love the catch for the 9 through 12. Absolutely. Yes, Jennifer, it is good to get into a routine. Yes, annotating, even if it's simple annotations, just those symbols for entering and emerging kids, it's so important to be teaching them annotation skills. The talk with the text one, you just they can talk about the text. So taking time to process and discuss the text as well is built into it. Those just statements. Scott, absolutely. Simplifying the routine. That's honest to goodness. If you get nothing else out of this presentation, simplify, simplify, simplify. That is my number one. And that was actually my motto in September. I kept telling myself, okay, I need to simplify, simplify, simplify. All right, how can I make this easier? How can I make this, because there is, especially this year, it is so hard and I cannot be stressed out. I need to be able to do my job when I'm at work. I need to be able to come home and be a mom to my kiddos. So I thank you, Tammy, for the love. I appreciate that this presentation was helpful. Yes, there is a lot. So please watch the recording. Thank you to Nice TESOL for housing the recordings, so that way we can all learn from each other, because it's that team acronym. Together we all achieve more, and we need this. So so thank you for coming today. And if there's any other questions or everything, please, you can stay on, you can ask. I will be here. All right. But thank you for being here today. Do save the chat. Thank you guys. Thank you, Corey, for the timer. Thank you so much. So I'm glad you were here. I'm glad it was a good use of your time, because I hate to waste people's time. We want them to just make our life simpler and better and be happy. So have a good rest of your week. One more day. You can do it.
Thank you so much, Katie. That was excellent. I think we all got so much out of that. Really useful. And simplify. But just so everybody knows, it will be on the Nice TESOL YouTube channel. So you'll be able to look at it along with all of the other ones that we've been doing. Thanks for joining us today.